Good evening and welcome once more to our weekly check-in here at Cornerstone Baptist Church. We're glad that you're able to be with us this evening. And this evening we wanted to do something a little bit different. For those who may have been on Facebook earlier, I gave a little bit of a teaser as to what we're doing. We've been hearing a lot in the news over the last couple of weeks and even again today about the residential school system in Canada and a lot of graves that are being found on the sites of some of these former schools. There's been 3 times already in the last couple of weeks that we've heard of that, and I'm sure, unfortunately, there's much more to come. So in a way to reflect upon this, to listen to this, we wanted to invite someone from our church to share a little bit of some of her family's history. Vera is here with us, and her mom, Sarah, was a part of the residential school system. So we want to hear a little bit of stories from her tonight to help us to reflect and remember what happened as we go on this road of reconciliation. Vera?
Hello. Thank you. I guess my mom, she attended the day school, which is, she didn't have to leave home to go to school, but my grandfather attended the residential school, and my mom's brothers. My mom was the 6th child of 9 children, and her 5 older brothers had to go. My mom was saved from my grandfather, who knew what already the abuse was about, and he hid her from, I was just telling Keith, the Indian agents and the church, the priests and the nuns, and he hid my mom along with one of her younger brothers and her 2 sisters, and he hid them in the bushes. I'm sorry.
No problem.
So she didn't have to go. She didn't have to go there, but she did have the abuse that came along with. My grandfather was an alcoholic. My uncles were all alcoholics from what they experienced. And they abused their partners. I'm thankful that my mom found her faith in God. She found my dad, and my dad, they built a life away from that. And but me and my brothers and sisters, we too experienced the effects of her trauma. We've been talking, me and my brothers and sisters, of what she went through and how we didn't really think it affected us, but it did. Our dad said he loved us every day. Our mom, she showed us and how she cared for us, and there's a song that always reminds me of my mom, and it's The Coat of Many Colors, because my mom sewed and she baked and everything. She was the best mom, but she couldn't ever really tell us she loved us. But we know she did. And it wasn't until her grandchildren came along that she actually started to use those words. And it wasn't until probably 2011 when the residential school survivors started speaking. And my mom would often come with me and we would talk about things. And I asked her, and she was still quiet. She wouldn't talk. And I'm horrible because I just kept grilling her, and I wanted her to talk about it. And she started talking, and, she was hit at school. She was her hair was pulled, and she was forced to stay in her clothing even if she had to use the washroom and they couldn't control themselves any longer. She'd have to stay in her soiled clothes. And my brother too had to experience that, and it's when they kind of left the reserve then too, because they were living on reserve, and she said she would never put us through that. My mom didn't go to school for our parent-teacher interviews. She was too afraid of the schools. She was too afraid of people of authority. So we had to become her voice and not let and protect her. You know, she protected us, but then we ended up protecting her from authority and schools. Like I said, she never came to our school. She would come to our concerts, but not our parent-teacher interviews. That was my dad's responsibility because she couldn't go into a school and listen to the teachers. She was afraid of them. So
it was really obvious to you your whole life with your mom, some of the residual effects of the experiences that she had and that her family had, whether she even talked about it or not. It was easy to see some of the things that happened as a result.
yeah, and a lot of things I believe she blocked out. And again, I know she was Mama Bear, and she wouldn't let no harm come to us, and protected us and shielded us from a lot of that, and shielded us from her family as well, where, you know, that abuse could have happened, you know, the intergenerational abuse that came along with that.
So, as someone who has experienced this in some way, and as someone who still is involved with Indigenous people on a regular basis, what is the message that you would like to give to the rest of us at this church and the rest of the people listening as we try to start on this road towards reconciliation?
I guess it's, you know, listening. You know, the Indigenous people have a lot of stories. They have a lot of stories to share. They're storytellers. I laugh because Indigenous people, at the same time, they're funny. They have the stories. They want you to hear their side and know that these aren't things that were made up. And this is something that I tell my children too. It's like, you know, the people that are unfortunate, less fortunate than us, and that are living on the streets, and, you know, we don't know why. We can only suspect that it is from them being a residential school survivor or a generational, and they want their story to be heard, and it's listening, it's understanding, and it's, you know, it's not getting over it, because it's learning from it is what we're trying to do.
Well, thank you so much, Vera. It's a privilege for us to be able to hear some of your stories, some of your family stories, some of your mom's story, because, as she said, that's something that's really important for us, is to be able to hear the stories and to reflect upon what did happen, and to recognize that these things did happen and that they are affecting people and will continue to affect people for a long time. As she said, the generational people as well. So we need to be there. We need to be able to listen to the stories, to reflect upon what happened, not to brush it off. They're all so important. All these kids are so important. It's so sad that so many of them lost their lives as a result of this, and we can't become numb when we hear these things. We have to continue to reflect upon the things that we hear and to remember the experiences that they had, and that they are just like the rest of us in so many ways. Is there anything else you want to say as we close off here tonight?
No, thank you. But again, it's like Indigenous people have a lot of stories, and I only began to learn my mom's, but sadly she went to heaven to be. I mean, happy for my dad because he has her back, but I know there was more for her to share, but.
Again, thank you so much, and let us continue to reflect upon and remember and listen to these stories and what has happened as we move forward. Thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank you.